welcome to episode 39 of the Sean McGuinness podcast. I am your host, Sean McGuinness, as you have probably guessed by now. Thanks for all the feedback so far in all the other episodes. It's been brilliant. From obviously cheering people up, having a laugh, to giving them information that they need to carry out this process on their own. Now, in today's episode, what I want to cover is the concept of flexible dieting. Okay. From my knowledge, it's a concept that came about from Lyle McDonald. Now, if you don't know Lyle McDonald, go check him out. Way smarter than I am. But he has pioneered a lot of nutrition knowledge. Not only the actual science of nutrition, but just as importantly, the psychology of humans in general. Because we could have the best, most optimal nutrition and diet plan for a human, but if they don't take into account that humans are not robots and we act in regards to emotions way more than logic, if we don't take that into account, it's not going to work for anyone. And I think this is where he says he has problems with maybe registered dietitians and stuff, which are obviously brilliant. I'm not having a go, but I think when they get out of the degree, when you're not used to working with people, you can fall into the trap where you're like, okay, this is the science, here you go. And then maybe a few months or a few years in, you're like, why the fuck is nobody doing what I say? Again, because we're not taking into account human psychology, and we can't separate both. They both go in tandem. So first, Lyle McDonald has a brilliant he has a ebook. I think it's a paperback copy, A Guide to Flexible Diet or Flexible Nutrition. Okay, I've taken some points out of it, so to not plagiarize it too much, I'm obviously going to reference where the source came from, and then I'm going to put my spin on it and how I use it with clients as well, as a way of creating a nutrition plan that somebody can use forever. Before he and most people outline what flexible diet is, it's important to look at why nutrition plans fail in general. One of the reasons, so we can break that into two parts. He breaks down the two parts in the book. How does the diet fail the dieter, and how does the dieter fail the diet? Now, he starts with how dieters fail the diet. One of the biggest kind of psychological biases that we have is an all or nothing mentality. You can also call it black or white mentality, perfectionist mentality. I've talked about this numerous times before. You'll probably listen to this going, yep, that's me. And it's kind of when you start a plan and you say, okay, during this plan, I'm going to go exactly perfect. I'm going to be on it 100%. No slip ups. I'm not even going to go 1% off plan. That's it. I'm on. Now, although the person means well, what usually happens at some point, it's not really if, it's when that person goes a little bit off plan. So when they're on, but when they're off, they are off. You can bet your house they are going for it. So there might have been one cookie to start with, but what's the point eating one cookie if I can't eat the whole box and then go down and buy 2 more boxes? And that's just as an entree. So you better know that when they're going a bit off plan, that's it. They take the keyboard out, they press the fucking button, and then they're off. And then, not only, if that person would have probably stopped with 1 box, the damage to that person's diet or fat loss will be minimal to if any, done. But it's when it's the recurring days after, that's when the damage is done, and they probably cancel that whole diet out for as long as they're on it. And not only cancel it out, but they probably now gained fat, so they're in a net plus of weight. After spending all those weeks with that effort of fat loss, what have they got as a result? Well, they've just gained weight. Congratulations, you've gained fat after restricting yourself for a few weeks. You probably shouldn't have done it in the first place. And actually, I've seen, I think some of the crazy numbers with weight regain is like 95%. Again, down to a few different things we will talk about. But when they measure the graph up of weight loss to then the regain again, they end up back in the same place as people who have just not even dieted in the first place. So it's crazy to actually think you might tell someone, if you're not going to do it properly, don't do it at all, because you're going to save yourself the heartache of missing out on your favorite foods, because you're not going to get anywhere in the long term. That sounds mad, doesn't it? So, how dieters fail diets, that's number one. They're being too absolute, they're expecting perfection, and they've seen this rigid mindset. I was going to say works for other areas of your life, probably doesn't, because it's normally a person that just shows up every day. Even if they're doing a little bit over the long term, they're probably going to get a better result if someone goes balls to the wall for 2 weeks and then burns himself out and then gets sick of it. So that's the first thing. It's that rigid mindset. The second thing which he mentions, and which again we can all attest to probably, is just, again, relates back to that, is focusing only on the short term. So you go, okay, I'm going to do this stupid diet that I see in the magazine. I'm going to do, who's the singer that had some mad diet? She lost a fair bit of weight, in fairness to her. Adele. I'm going to do this thing Adele did, and you can only eat red type of fruits, and I don't know, it was something stupid. Or insert any favorite celebrity / influencer in that. I'm going to copy what they do. So they're only focused on the short term. You can even include juice cleanses and low carb. Anything that has a name on it, you can include in there. So you're not really looking at the long term. You're going, okay, I just need to lose weight now. And obviously we know any diet is going to work in the short term. They will. It's not a matter of if a mad drastic diet will work. They're going to work because you've just gone from a certain place, I'm going to assume, where you're not eating that good or exercising at all. Now you just probably half your calories or eating. You're going to eat a quarter of what you normally do, and you're going to exercise. Of course you're going to lose weight. You're going to go into a calorie deficit. But that is like trying to hold your breath. At some point, your body's going to force you to breathe. And when it comes to dieting, especially very drastic diets, the more you push against your body, the more it's going to push back. So it's going to do that by increasing your hunger, increase your cravings. Combine that with the first point where you just cut out everything you enjoy, and then you have one little bit, bam, you're just putting gasoline in that fire. So you're going to binge out. That's, again, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So you're not thinking, okay, normally when it comes to nutrition, we got the goal, which we'll talk about, is you have to create a plan that you can do long term. Or if you're going to do something a little bit more aggressive at the start in terms of fat loss, which can be done, you need to have a way out of that. So you need to have a plan or strategy after the original diet. So you can go a little bit aggressive starting off, but you need to have a way that you're going to moderate that, and you have a plan what you're going to do after, which most people don't. They just diet themselves into oblivion. They binge out and gain all the weight back. That's kind of the two main things when it comes to that. Then he mentions how diets fail dieters. Okay, so this is the actual nutrition makeup that is causing you to fail. The probably most obvious one is too much hunger. So again, people probably diet themselves so hard, the hunger and hunger signals, their cravings go up, their appetite goes up, their fullness signals go down. All these very complex stuff going on in between our brain and our stomach that crazy enough people think they can override very aggressively. You can't. And yeah, in combination with the psychological ones, this is physiological. So you get too hungry, obviously in our food environment, you're going to binge out. and the other main one, it's not matched to the dieter. So again, we probably see you go to maybe a dietitian or nutritionist, they write you this beautiful plan up, but they haven't asked you, like, what's your lifestyle like? Do you have a family? Do you like to eat with the family at night? Do you have social events on? Do you have to take people out for business meetings that involve drink and food? Well, if you do, simply just getting a generic plan is the absolute most pointless thing ever. It's like buying a pair of shoes. You haven't seen what size you wear. Alright? You have to tailor whatever you're doing to the plan. They have to be overlapped. Okay? On your wedding day, you get your dress or suit tailored. You don't go in getting some random thing and hopefully it fits. You wouldn't take that chance, would you? So why do you take that chance when it comes to nutrition? Again, it's not me just giving you a lecture. I'm just trying to put it in perspective. And that is probably kind of two of the main points when it comes to that, because obviously if your diet is not congruent with your lifestyle, how are you going to do it long term? Your plan's telling you to eat meat and eggs in the morning, but you don't really like breakfast, and you don't eat meat and eggs, and you don't have time to do that. So all these things that we need to look at. Okay, then it comes to the point that we've seen rigid dieting just doesn't work at all. Okay, the science clearly says that. What they have seen that does work long term is a flexible approach to nutrition. And it works for a few different reasons. It basically covers all these things that normally trip people up. A flexible approach to nutrition basically just means that you're including foods and drinks that you enjoy into your plan and eating in a way that suits your lifestyle that you can stick to long term. Because again, like I've talked about, we have the mindset that when we're trying to lose fat, it needs to be miserable, it needs to be just eating only good food. And when we tie back that perfectionist mindset, people that have this will polarize food. So they'll say, okay, these foods are good, I can only eat these when I'm trying to lose fat, and then these foods are bad, I can't eat these when I'm trying to lose fat. And that makes it worse. Okay, what we're trying to do is basically look at food and think, okay, some food has more calories, some food has less, then we can go a little more. Some food makes us a bit more full, some food has a bit more nutrients, some food makes us feel less full, some food is a bit easier to overeat, some food contains a bit less nutrients. When we go back into a calorie deficit, I've just made a post. I don't know if it's going to post. Well, yeah, actually, this will be released on Monday, so it should be posted by now. Basically, has this Dr. Jason Fung, this absolute quack. Absolutely boils me blood thinking about it, because he has such a massive following and just talks absolute garbage, like unscientific. If someone has doctor in front of the name, it doesn't mean they're right. Okay, because there's always someone with doctor in front of the name telling them that they're wrong. So I think, actually, funny enough, on a tangent, I was listening to one of the guys that was involved. He's one of the main guys for infomercials, one of the most sought after people, and they're asking him how to get people to buy those late night stuff where you're like, do you have a headache? You need this pill. Are you overweight? Do you need this garbage piece of gym equipment that you'll never use? Well, if so, blah, 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 blah. And one of the most influential ways to persuade people is to just use someone in a lab coat, or use someone with doctor in front of the title. Person could be doctor of chiropractic or doctor of engineering. But so we assume if someone has the title doctor in front of the name, they're always right. So this Dr. Fung, I'd like to call him Doctor something else, but I'll say that off here. He basically talking about, okay, hormones are the main thing that makes you fat, calories don't count, blah, 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 blah. And then I switch the post to a professor, where is he? Professor Stanford of nutrition. And he did this experiment called the Twinkie Diet. And he ate only sugary foods, controlled his calories, and lost weight. So here's your man, Dr. Fung. Oh, you have to eat only to do with hormones, calories. This calorie myth is ripe, and I don't want people to believe it. And it cuts to Mark Haub, I think his name is. Eats only junk food and loses 20 pounds in a few weeks. Reverses cholesterol, increases good cholesterol, decreases bad cholesterol, increase every good health marker by eating only junk food. So when we come back to look at a calorie deficit, you can literally eat only shit junk food and you'll still lose weight. That's what we need to get a head around. So the first cause of breakdown is understanding that, okay, we can eat only sugar and still lose weight. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. You could eat only sugar, and if you control the calories, you will lose weight. People out of the absolute, again, they think they only need to eat good food. So we need to get that point around. So we're not polarizing food, and we're not feeling a sense of guilt and shame when we eat foods that we enjoy, because somehow we think they're going to make us fat. They're not. It's the amount over time that can increase our weight. These foods can potentially be very easy to overeat on, but if we control the amounts, we can include them in a plan. And we do want to include them, because that means if we can find a way of eating that we can stick to long term, then we're going to win and we're going to keep that weight off. And that's what the kind of flexible approach is. It's looking and saying, okay, there is no good or bad foods. We want to find a way that we can eat for us. Now, an easy kind of rule that I'll give people, I've talked about before, is the 80-20 rule. Now, it's not set in stone. I just use it because it's a popular rule. And I kind of gives clients a good outlook on it. If we can get 80% of our daily food coming from whole foods, we can use 20% of our daily calories to include foods or drinks that we enjoy in that. So, for example, if our calorie goal is 1900, we can get 20% of that. I'm not good at maths on the fly. I don't know. I think it's like 280, 300 calories, whatever it is. And we could say, okay, for those 300 calories, I'm going to have 2 chocolate bars after dinner, because I want that. Because if I give you 1 or 2 chocolate bars every day, that's going to stop you from binging out at the end of the week, because you're like, well, I'm eating that. I don't really need to binge on it because I feel mentally satisfied. I don't feel that restriction. Then when I get most of my calories from whole foods, well, that's going to cover kind of why diets fail, because there's too much hunger. So obviously, if we just eat only junk food, okay, theoretically that will work, like it did work. But over time, obviously, as we start to lose weight, your body's going to increase your hunger. So it will increase your hunger, and then what will happen is, because those foods are very easy to overeat on, because they're very rewarding foods, it will be too hard not to undereat them over a long time. So we have to have foods in there that, as our hunger naturally starts to increase, because that's what will happen as we start to lose weight. There's certain mechanisms. You can quote your starvation response. All it is just mechanisms kick in to make sure you're not losing too much weight and fight back kind of what against you're doing. Now, within that, so we have mostly whole foods. There are certain kind of checklist of that nutrition that we want. Okay, so like I've talked about before, after our calories, which is the most important thing, whether someone loses weight or not, don't know why mum my words, long day. We want to make sure we have sufficient protein within that. And that, again, like I've talked about before, go back to previous episodes, that's just to make sure that our body is not going to tap into our own muscle tissue to use to break down, to use for other essential processes in the body. So if we're not eating enough and we're not getting enough protein in, our body needs protein, amino acids that are made up of protein to use for our immune system, our detoxification, regrowth for hairs, nails, for our organs, so it will start to break that down, and that's obviously not what we want. When we're looking at fat loss, we're trying to maintain all that muscle while we lose the fat around it. So that's our next priority. So again, around 2 grams per kilo of body weight, what we want. After that, and they've looked at long-term studies of people that have lost weight. So after the high protein diets work. That's Atkins diet, all that kind of stuff, that works, because that protein not only maintains muscle, but it keeps us very full and satiated, especially when we're getting protein from whole foods. Animal proteins, if you eat animal proteins. I'm not saying go eat protein bars all day, because that's not going to work, or protein shakes. It has to be from whole foods, because they take longer to digest and keep us full and satiated. The next thing what we want to look at is make sure we're getting enough fiber within that nutrition. So getting lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, lots of roughage. If you're eating carbohydrates coming from ideally whole food sources that again take longer to break down, fiber slows the digestive process down, that's going to keep us full and satiated. And then you probably want no less than, say, 20% of that, your overall calories, coming from fat. Okay, because fat over the long term, they've seen, is involved in keeping you full and satiated also. Again, if you're at the stage already, not to go too complicated, that mostly coming from monosaturated and polyunsaturated. If you don't know what they are, just Google it. Basically, just think of the Mediterranean diet, where you're getting lots of good oils, olive oil, avocados, fish oils, oily fishes, etc. Once we have those bases covered, you can fill the rest with carbohydrates, okay? And then you can include a small percentage coming from foods you enjoy. This is what a lot of my clients will do on a daily basis. So I'll basically look and we'll say, okay, just have a think of what foods you can never live without. What food would you like every day? The only exception to this may be a certain trigger food. So if there's a certain food that you eat that you cannot control yourself and it makes it worse, that may be the only particular version of that food that you may have to omit anyway in the short term. Now, when I say version of food, because people always say chocolate, well, it's not all chocolate. If I give you a little bit darker chocolate, you probably won't binge on that, or a different flavor, different texture. So have a think of maybe what trigger foods, or maybe one or two things. But then we can work around that. You can get some other different variations. And aim to include, again, a small percentage of that each day in your nutrition. See, does that work with your hunger? See, does that work with your mental kind of capacity? We're not trying to restrict you. You feel... a big thing I'll get a lot of the time is from my online clients especially, not that it doesn't work for my face-to-face, but it's more shocking because I maybe I have more time with face-to-face clients, I can explain the process better. But with my online people, I always get people shocked, being like, Sean, I don't feel like I'm on a diet, but I'm losing fat. Like, is there something wrong here? Ideally, that's what you want to an extent. Okay? There is an overlap. We obviously can't have every food we want and still lose fat. So it's always a happy medium. We're trying to get a happy medium between getting enough protein, getting enough fiber, getting enough fat, getting enough good carbohydrates, and then still getting a little bit of the foods and drinks that we enjoy. Whether it's, like I said, you have a small percentage of that each day, whether it's you might go 5 days, Monday to Friday, and then you have a meal out that consumes a big amount of that day's calories that may be not deemed as healthy, but it still fits your overall calories. That's fine. You're just trying to find a system that works for you, that you don't feel mentally restricted on, because that will lead to long-term gain. And again, a quotation from that ebook, we can look. Recent paper reached the quote-unquote brilliant, sarcastic, brilliant conclusion that the best diet for weight loss is the one that people stick to for a long term. Within some range, it's as much about finding a diet that you can live on in the long term than anything else. So that's why it's, again, we're important. Not to repeat myself, but have a think of what foods or drinks that you could never live without, and start to build them into nutrition, either daily or weekly, whatever it is. This may be a little bit harder for some people because they just want to go balls to the wall. So for the people who are naturally a bit more of that all or nothing or perfectionist mentality, they kind of find the happy medium is way harder. Finding that medium or that grey area is way harder for people, because they may feel like they're not achieving as much because, like, oh, I'm still having the foods I enjoy. So if I'm not putting myself in that, making myself suffer, as crazy as that sounds, well, I'm not doing it properly. And that, again, that's not the way to judge success on a plan. Come back to what I said and why all this stuff fails. That's the best way to make things fail. And again, it's coming back to Phil Learney talks about before, when he uses that analogy. Don't think of the white polar bear. Then he asks everyone what you think about the white polar bear, obviously. So when, as humans, when we mentally make something off bounds, you want them more. It's like when people go, you're not allowed to have any carbs. Suddenly you start fucking craving carbs. Couldn't think of anything better. When that girl turns you down, suddenly they're more attractive. Yeah? You always want something that you can't have. Ask most of them married men in Sydney. I think that is all I want to cover. So the whole basis, again, you can do your own research into it. Google flexible dieting, Lane Norton, Lauren McDonald have great stuff on it. We don't want to expect perfection, and actually expecting perfection is going to lead you to fail. We're trying to gain a plan that gives us a happy medium between enjoying ourselves and losing fat. Obviously, the goal is to lose fat, so if you can do this, you have your fat loss rate 0.55% to 1% of body weight a week on average if you're in the right deficit. I then come back to that. Always check your hunger, how's your energy, how's your cravings. You're trying to look at the markers as you go along your plan. And today, as mad as it is with all the foods they make to make us overeat, there is some good alternatives out there. Like I put up a post about the ice cream, the Ben and Jerry's beside the Halo Top. The Halo Top's 300 calories. You can eat the whole tub. Ben and Jerry's the same amount, and it's 1,200 calories, so it's 4 times the amount. So someone may ask, both are not off bounds, but it's like, well, are you going to use your whole day calories eating the Ben and Jerry's and be starving for the rest of the day, or are you going to eat a good amount of food, whole foods that day, and save 300 calories for Halo Top? Eat the whole tub, you feel great, and then you can carry on. That's what we want. And coming back to constructing a plan around your lifestyle, what you will do is we'll look at, again, not to throw too much information, on average 3 meals a day works great for people. For some people, smaller calorie deficits, they may use 2 as a way to feel like they're not eating smaller meals. But on average, 3 works good. And again, it's probably the most optimal for muscle retention. If you always have big dinners out with your family or big dinners out with business, you may just look at like saving the majority of those calories for dinner and then constructing them throughout the other 2 meals, or whatever way. You have to figure that out, what works best for you. So there you go. Just a little bit of an overview on a flexible approach to dieting, where we're trying to get a happy medium between our health, fat loss, and also the psychological component of being in the game for long term. Because listen to me right now, if you don't get anything else in this podcast, you're not going to transform your body in 4 weeks. You're not going to transform your body in 8 weeks. You have to be in the game for the long run. Okay, I've had clients chip away for a year, 2 years, they're starting to achieve phenomenal results. But if they compare 4 weeks, okay, if it's people in the real world with real responsibilities who can't afford to go mad aggressive diets because they'll lose their head, they'll binge out, you have to stay in the game for the long run. And that means finding a way of eating that you can stick to and you feel mentally satisfied doing for the long run. Don't even start the plan if you're not thinking about that. Trust me. Eat the ice cream, take a seat, watch your Netflix. Don't even bother, because you're going to end up in the same place as that same person who did that anyway. Okay. Boom. That is it for episode 39. If you have any questions, just email me to Sean@livelongperformance.com. Message me on Instagram. Our new coaching program's coming up in January, so keep an eye out for that. I'm also going to be releasing some resources that will outline everything I talked about without the bad jokes and the mumbo jumbo that you can just buy. That will outline all you need to set your calories, your flexible nutrition, blah, 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 blah. Everything you need to do it on your own as well. And that will be released in January, so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, make sure you listen to all the other episodes of the podcast. Go look at my YouTube presentation on fat loss. Got some good feedback on that. And get my free resources on Instagram, homework. And thank God, hopefully the gyms stay open now and everyone's out of lockdown, because I'm absolutely sick to death of writing home workouts. If you are unfortunate enough to still be doing them, there's some free ones on my Instagram as well. And the free 21-day fat loss Kickstarter to get you started. Boom. Over and out. I will see you all in the next episode.